Unconstitutional eviction moratorium advanced by the CDC. CDC.
What does CDC have to do with rent control? That's none of their business.
They're
Honestly,
everything now.
Overreach of government.
Center for Control ruled it unconstitutional after it had been allowed to go on for months after it was conceded as unconstitutional by the Supreme Court, and then it was re-upped by Joe Biden, even though he conceded it was unconstitutional. Then finally the Supreme Court said last week it's unconstitutional, and then the Illinois Supreme Court
says what?
Extends the eviction order to September 18th, the eviction moratorium. Temporary stay on certain residential eviction trials and dispositive motions extended to September 18th by the Illinois Supreme Court. Okay. And this hysteria you're hearing from the left about an estimate that between 2.5 and 3.5 million American households are behind on rent. Landlords owed as much as $17 billion collectively. That's sort of a number that doesn't mean that much. You have to break that down a little bit. But 750,000 U.S. households could be evicted later this year, barring action by Congress. All these people in dire straits who haven't paid rent in 18 months, at least a year.
Yeah, and some of them have kept their jobs. They don't have to pay rent. Why should I pay it?
Well, if you didn't keep your job, and I'm sympathetic to those who didn't, if they lost their job, I'm less sympathetic now because there's lots of work to be had. Number one. Number two, you got aid checks 3 times. Number 3, you have enhanced unemployment benefits for much of that period of time too. So, and you just removed a major monthly expense from your nut for the last better part, year at least. And so how is it you can't work out a deal with your landlord or make some sort of payment down on the forbearance that was provided so that you catch up on your rent over time? I mean, I think landlords want to get paid, but understandably so, since they've had to continue paying like the mortgage on the property they own while their renters were not. It's pretty understandable, the position of the landlord, particularly the smaller ones. But how is it that so many people are in dire straits? Is there no personal responsibility? Can we do a handful of audits? Will people volunteer to have their household finances audited to see what they've done and how they've managed said finances over the last year? If you want to go run to the TV cameras or to the newspapers and offer your tale of woe, then how about you submit to an audit of your household finances over the last year and see if you were behaving responsibly in terms of what you knew ultimately would come, that this is forbearance, meaning you don't have to pay now, like, 6 months of forbearance after you graduate from college with respect to your student loans. But, in 6 months, I got to start making payments on my student loans. And so I better get a job. I better get to figure out how to pay X amount of dollars I know I'm going to have to pay in 6 months. We'll pick up this conversation now with Steve Moore. He, of course, Wall Street Journal columnist, Trumponomics author, economist. Steve, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
So I just have to say this, guys, you are the most cold-hearted people.
I know.
Oh, yeah.
I know.
I mean, do you not
hate
have
the
heart?
poor?
And by the way, Amy, I've been asking the same question. What the hell does the Center for Disease Control have to do with eviction moratorium?
I know.
I mean, how crazy is that? Look, I have 2 really good friends who are not rich, who do own apartment buildings and rental properties. That's what they do for a living.
Yep.
And they told me about a year ago, I was having a conversation with both of them. They said, Steve, the day they announced these eviction moratoriums, they both said 80 to 90% of the people stopped paying their rent immediately. Now, I don't think 80 or 90% of these people were in dire financial straits and at risk of becoming homeless. People respond to incentives. That's the thing about the left. They don't understand incentives. If you give a person incentive not to pay the rent, they're going to not pay the rent. If you tell a person you don't have to pay the rent, if you don't, you're not going to get kicked out of the house. People won't pay the rent. It's the same thing with the conversation we have so many times on the show about the stupidity of continuing to expand these unemployment insurance benefits. If you pay people to stay unemployed, they will stay unemployed. I find it a complete violation of property rights. That someone who owns a property and has a contract with someone, the government can come in and say, you don't have to pay that rent, or you don't have to find a job. I just don't understand it. It would be equivalent, folks, to think, hey, you know what, Danny, I have finally found the solution for hunger in America. You know what it is? That everyone who's hungry should just be able to go to the grocery store and take whatever food they want and not pay for it.
Well, I just want to understand what's going on here, and this 2.5 to 3.5 million people that Goldman Sachs estimates. That's what percentage is that? This reminds me of 2008, 2009, the Great Recession, where you had 1 in 8 mortgages that were underwater. The people that had gotten HELOCs and they were doing speculative second homes, and it was the signature loans and all this stuff. So, and everybody focuses on the 1 in 8, the 1 in 8 who sent their keys to the bank, walked away from the house, were upside down, so on and so on.
Right.
How about the 7 in 8 who just paid their bills, who just gutted it out? And so this is the same thing here. Now, everybody's focused on the 2.5 million or 3.5 million, whatever the estimate is. What about all the people that either kept paying or budgeted for what they knew would come after forbearance ultimately ended at some point in the not too distant future? And we don't use them as an example. We just focus on people, I think in most cases, who had options and probably made some bad decisions and now don't want to suffer the consequences. Those consequences are supposed to be borne by the rest of us. Again.
So, yeah, I mean, great point. And I want to add another point. So, I read these kind of left-wing rags about, the bleeding hearts and all the problems in America. And one of the problems they keep talking about in America is we don't have enough affordable housing. In our cities like Chicago and New York and Los Angeles, we don't have enough affordable housing. Okay, let's accept that premise. I don't know if it's true or not, but let's say there's not enough affordable housing. What do you think it's going to do to the supply of affordable housing if you tell people they don't have to pay their rent?
Right? Exactly.
I mean,
Well, Stephen,
who in the world would build an apartment building with affordable housing units if the people don't have to pay the rent? And by the way, these friends of mine, by the way, are not rich people.
No,
So
I know,
if they
but
don't get the rental payment, they can't make the mortgage.
yeah, but right, that's what I was going to ask you. So if they didn't get the rent, so how did they make the mortgage payment or pay the property taxes even?
Well, some of them had enough money, from their past, rents that they could, but each month that people don't pay the rent, it gets tougher and tougher and tougher to pay the mortgage, and then the bank doesn't get the money, because the loan is with the bank. I don't know. I don't understand why it is that we reward bad behavior in this country.
Well,
Yes, here's my idea of program. Okay, anybody who says they can't pay the rent and is able-bodied, we hold their hand, we take them down to the local construction firm or the manufacturing company or the restaurant or the store and say, "Hey, look, they're hiring. You can work here, and then you can pay your rent." We have 10 million freaking jobs open in the country today. How is it people can't pay their rent?
Well, also too, this like affordable housing. This highlights the affordable housing problem, the scarcity of it.
Yeah.
Wait, they're in housing. This is not for homeless. They were in this place that they're still in, and they weren't paying the rent. What are you talking about? So everybody who is going to be evicted this year, if Congress doesn't act according to the way this is reported by the Beltway press, they were already in these places. So they obviously could afford them up until the pandemic started, and they got rent forbearance. So now they become unaffordable when I don't have to pay rent. I mean, what is this?
It's a great point. And also, look, these friends of mine who own, because I know a little bit about this business, if you've got a renter who, hey, look, I've lost my job, I'm having a little bit of trouble paying my rent, the person who owns the landlord will basically say, okay, let's renegotiate this. I'll give you, pay half your rent this month and next month, and then you can make it up later.
Yeah, right.
I mean, markets have a way of adjusting. Not everybody's going to be thrown out on the street. But I'll tell you this, I mean, you've got millions and millions of people in this country who are capable of paying the rent, you're so right, Dan. We're paying people so much money and all these government benefits. The idea that people are incapable of paying the rent, I just don't buy it. I think that they view this as, oh, great, this is a get out of jail free card. I don't have to pay my rent for 6 months. And you're right. This has been, when did we start this program? I think you're right, Dan. It was almost
a year ago,
16, 18 months ago.
Yeah, at least.
Must be nice.
And by the way, the problem with affordable housing, quote unquote, affordable housing in places like New York City is nothing to do with the rich. It has to do with terrible public policy like rent control. But I digress. I want to get your handle on this too. Jonathan Chait, writing over at New York Magazine, lamenting.
Okay, stop right there. That guy's the biggest idiot in America.
I know that. So I'm teeing this up for you, beautifully. He is lamenting that apparently wealthy lobbyists, quote unquote, have slashed Biden's tax reform, quote unquote, by 3/4. The $3.5 trillion tax increase over a decade is now down to only around $1 trillion because of the lobbyists. But I mean, as in your view, has the size of Biden's tax increase, is that being pared back to something that will have negligible impact?
I think that's what Wall Street is betting on. So I've been asked many times, with this massive tax increase, that it's an absurd thing, by the way. The 40% increase in the death tax, the increase in dividend tax, the increase in capital gains taxes. Now they want, by the way, did you see now they want an energy tax, which, by the way, I think people who make less than $400,000 pay for energy. So the idea that this is going to only affect the rich is ridiculous. But I do think there's a good chance that this absurd tax bill is going to get pared back. And it's not because of lobbyists. Some of that is true, but it's also because you've got farmers, ranchers, small businessmen and women who are coming to Washington saying, this is going to kill my business. If you family-owned business get crushed by this death tax increase. So I do think there's a good chance we can get a lot of the worst features of this tax bill pared back. And, there's still a lot of work to be done. My estimate, by the way, Biden wants $4.5 trillion of new spending. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna make a prediction on your show. I'm devoting every single minute of every single day and up until Christmas, because I think that's how long this will go, to defeating this bill. It is this $3.5 trillion so-called reconciliation bill. By the way, you guys sitting down, I just heard from my Senate staffer friend that they estimate this bill will be over 15,000 pages long.
Oh my
15,000 pages.
There's not enough time in the day to read that.
Well, first
Are
of
you
all,
a speed reader, Amy?
No, Dan is, but he couldn't even tackle that.
I mean,
how many people are going to? I mean, remember Nancy Pelosi. We'll read the bill after we pass it.
Yeah.
So we're going to pass this gigantic bill that transforms America, and nobody's going to know what's in it. This is insanity. So this is the worst bill. I've been in Washington 35 years. This is by a mile the worst and most dangerous bill in American history. We must defeat it.
Well, I mean, let's be honest, too. 98% of members of Congress wouldn't read it if it was 15 pages long, much less 15,000. They're barely literate.
That's true.
He is Steve Moore, economist, Wall Street Journal columnist, Trumponomics author. Steve, thanks.
Okay, guys. Take care.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
This is the morning show more Chicago radio listeners are choosing. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Meet Tim.
Hey, what's up?
He's the person you hired for your digital marketing, and when he's done battling aliens on his PS5 in his parents' basement, he'll get right to work. Now, meet the team at Salem Surround.
What's up?
These are the people who are passionate about your success and will work 24/7 to deliver real customers to you and your business. Why would you trust your digital marketing to one person when you can hire a whole team? Get nationwide experience, resources, and results.
Learn more about Salem Surround at surroundchicago.com.